Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 741 for the 18th of December 2022. Richard Saunders coming to you this week from the Bay Area, San Francisco. Coming up on this week's show, part one of a two-part interview with my old friend Dr. Eugenie Scott. And Eugenie and I talk about the anniversary of Kitzmiller versus Dover, a very important case in the ongoing story of the battle between creationists, intelligent designers, and science. Also, Jeannie looks at the impact of various religious outlooks on the public school system. It's always good to be here in the Bay Area, but thank my lucky stars. Thank my lucky stars, or lucky something. What good luck I had many years ago to meet Eugenie Scott and become friends. Thank you, Jeannie, for looking after me for a few days. Following that, it's the Australian Skeptics newsletter, read once again by Adrian Hill. And this week it's a little longer than normal because Tim Mendham, who writes the newsletter, was very busy and found lots of interesting stories. Then to round off the show, it's back to the Trove Archives, and this week we look at crystal healing, crystal power, crystal energy, one of the classics of the New Age. But now it's time for me to walk around the corner in my little apartment here, look into the kitchen and have some American coffee. While I do that, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Eugenie Scott is admiring my microphones. This is a message for Susan Gerbeck, who listens to the show and always laughs at me because I've got... Hello, Jeannie.
Hi there, how are you? And Susan, this isn't a completely new microphone, as he explained, but it does have some new bells and whistles. So yeah, situation normal. Richard's back.
And it's just a reminder to those lovely people who support the Skeptic Zone that your money does go to good use. As I was just explaining the microphone to Jeannie, and I could see her, she was admiring the sophisticated equipment. This is the Rode Wireless Go. I don't get any money from the Rode company, but this is the microphone we're using at the moment. Wonderful to see you again.
It is lovely to have you back back stateside.
Stateside, here I am, and this is my favorite time of the year to be in the Bay Area. Nice December weather.
Yeah, because you don't like it hot in Australia.
No, I do not.
Let's just switch houses some year, okay? Because I don't like the cold,
right,
and you don't like the hot. So you can come here and stay here and get the nice, cool, 40, 50, 60-degree Northern California weather, and I can bake in Sydney.
Well, it's not the baking so much; it's the humidity that does my head in. Oh well, never mind. So I wanted to catch up with you a couple of things. You mentioned to me just the other day that it's 15 years since the Kitzmiller versus Dover. And just for people who don't know, briefly, can you explain that and why it was such an important case?
It's actually 17 years.
17
because
years.
I was telling you about the 15-year reunion, but it was really the 15 years plus 2 because we had to move it for COVID purposes.
Right.
No, the trial was in 2005, and its significance was that it was the first and thus far only, thank goodness, trial, in this case, district court, federal district court, of whether it is legal to teach intelligent design creationism in the public schools in the United States. And big surprise, it wasn't. The judge, who actually is a Republican judge appointed by a Republican president, he had actually run for political office in Pennsylvania, but a judge that looked at the evidence dispassionately, and although a churchgoer himself, did not believe that the First Amendment of the United States Constitution, the Establishment Clause thereof, allows the teaching of what is basically a disguised religious idea as science or any other discipline. You cannot advocate religion in the public schools of the United States, full stop. That, unfortunately, may be changing because we've had, this is the first time I've talked about it on a podcast, so you are, there you go. There was a case this last spring, Kennedy versus Bremerton, Supreme Court case, where the issue involved the religious rights, if you will, of a high school football coach who wanted to pray on the football field after the games.
Australia,
yes. Well, it was a big case. But one of the things that might not have been noticed by a lot of people, but which everybody on my side of the creation and evolution issue noticed right away, is that the justice writing the case said that it basically dismissed an earlier precedent, a case called Lemon versus Kurtzman, I think 1975, could it be 74? 74. The Lemon case had been the Supreme Court case that the Supremes and all district courts and every other court in the country has used as a criterion for criteria for how you judge whether a law or a practice violates the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause. So, if the law, there's no point in going through the test. But at any rate, it's been a super important issue because every single case that's come since the 70s about the legality of teaching creationism has been based upon Lemon versus Kurtzman.
Right. And
all of a sudden, the Supreme Court says, nope, you can't use that as precedent anymore. Instead of using this three-part test for Establishment Clause issues, we're going to look at history and tradition. Now that's a recipe.
Can of worms.
That is a recipe for disaster. That is throwing up a big neon sign flashing, cherry pick your heart out, because whereas the Lemon test said, if it does this, if it does that, does that, then it's unconstitutional. The history and tradition, what the hell does that mean?
Yeah.
Does that mean that it was history and tradition back in the Revolutionary War days, when pretty much you had to be a Christian in the United States, which does not make this a Christian nation, by the way, and that's another whole argument. And when prayer took place there really wasn't a public school system, of course, that was much later, but where, it was traditional to pray all the time, to pray in school, and they would, there was no science being taught, there was no evolution being taught, and if anybody wanted to know, how did the earth get here, teacher, it was because God went poof. Special creation was considered how everything came about. So is that history and tradition? Is that what we should go back to?
Right.
No, so it is very scary, and I'm sure it's not just those of us on our side of this issue who are saying, what's going to happen next? Does this mean the creationists are going to gear up again for future attacks on the public schools to try to get creationism back in, or try to get, evolution discredited, which is what they have been doing? Although, the quite honestly, you were asking, we got started on this rant by talking about what is the significance of Kitzmiller. The main significance is that the traditional creation science, special creation, young earth creationism, that is pretty familiar and found in a number of museums in the United States, that had pretty much been smacked down out of the schools. There really weren't any policies coming up saying, well, we should teach that the earth was created in 6 days. Nobody was saying that anymore because that had been dispatched with in the courts. But this newfangled intelligent design creationism, which popped up around the late 80s. And
that long ago?
Yeah. But it really didn't get going until the 90s and the 2000s.
Right.
Kitzmiller was 2005.
Yeah.
So, 17 years. But this newfangled creation science, intelligent design, it was marketed as something, and now for something completely different, right? Yeah. And it was supposed to be not that old creation science stuff. This is intelligent design. Well, it was just a subset of creation science, quite honestly, which is what we demonstrated.
I remember interviewing you before some years ago. And one of the things that always stuck in my mind was you mentioned a book that was produced for intelligent design where the computer had simply removed the word creationism out or something.
That was one of the things that we pointed out in the Kitzmiller versus Stover trial. Right, yes. We had managed to acquire through requesting through the courts in preparation for the trial, we had managed to acquire a series of drafts of manuscripts of a textbook that the intelligent design proponents had produced called Of Pandas and People.
Yes.
Or OPAP, as we refer to it regularly. But we were able to show that Pandas and People had started out as a creation science book. And they talked about a creator doing this and that, and as the manuscripts went through various issues, various episodes of refinement, in 1987, when the Supreme Court came up with its Louisiana decision striking down the teaching of creation science in the public schools, suddenly the next episode, the next manuscript after that particular court decision changed wording in a very particular way. The explicitly creationist language was taken out, and it was very clear because we could literally trace sentence by sentence changes. And there was one change that a lot of people know about because it is so funny, but which we actually didn't use in the trial because we figured that was just overkill. Okay. I mean, we had already showed so many ways that Of Pandas and People, the intelligent design textbook, right, was clearly rooted in creation science, and it was just trying to disguise itself. But there was this one passage where which is I think what you're talking about, where the phrase in the earlier manuscript said, creationists propose such and such. Yeah. And somebody had just done a block and paste.
Yes.
And generally speaking, throughout the manuscript, where it had previously said creationists propose, it now said intelligent design proponents propose, except this one place where they just must have been in a hurry, and where I guess the word processing software was not as efficient as it became later, and it was literally block and paste. Some of us remember block and paste, but they pasted in design proponents. But they kind of did it in the middle of the word. Oh. So instead of design proponents propose, it was design proponentsists, sort of plopping down in the middle of the word creationist, which tickled us near to death. But we thought, if we put this in the trial as well, the judge is just going to think we're piling on, right? Okay. And and because it is just so silly and ridiculous, we didn't want to change the tenor of our approach. We wanted them to we wanted the judge to think that we were serious scholars, et cetera, et cetera. But that was so funny.
That's good.
That is just so funny.
That's good.
Yeah. So Kitzmiller is still an important case because it basically kept intelligent design from spreading. There were several states that we knew of that were poised to introduce legislation. There were some school districts that we already knew about that were all ready to leap into similar policies that the Dover School Board had proposed. But once the district court decision came down, they said, okay, try something else. They packed up and went home.
Well, I don't know. I don't keep my finger on the pulse of creationism as much as we used to, in Australia especially.
Because it's faded away so much.
It's faded away so much. Should we be celebrating, or is this a lull before the storm, or what's the situation? And how is the National Centre for Science Education doing at the moment with all this?
Oh, they're doing fine. They have actually shifted a lot of their focus in the last 10 years or so from as much fighting creationism to helping teachers do a better job teaching of evolution, of climate change, of the nature of science, which is good. We always used to talk at NCSE about, we hand out the fire extinguishers, but what we really would like to do is clear the brush. So
right.
this is brush clearing.
A stitch in time saves nine, right? Yeah.
Well, this is helping the teachers do a better job so that the brush fires don't start.
Yeah.
So the pressure against teachers, the pressure against school boards has diminished greatly in the last 10 years. And it even started diminishing when I was still at NCSE, and that was, I retired in 2014, so that was a while ago. But there still have been, every year there's still state legislatures that pass anti-science stuff, and some of these, more of them dealt with climate change than evolution in the last 10 years.
Right.
And now we've got Kennedy versus Bremerton. That's that case that I was describing with the high school football coach, and the striking down of Lemon versus Kurtzman as a major bulwark against Establishment Clause violations. So what is going to happen? We're not going to go out and say, try again, but I'm sure the creationists have noticed. They're not sitting back, not paying attention to these kinds of decisions. So I would not be at all surprised if in some future Dover-type school board situation, there isn't or in some, state board of education, there isn't an effort to try to either propose some kind of creationism or try to diminish the teaching of evolution. And I'm kind of leaning a little bit toward the latter, quite honestly, because remember you don't remember. You're not an American. You don't have to remember. But in the First Amendment's religion clause, it's got two parts.
Oh, yes.
The establishment, it is no state agency can establish or promote religion in a public context. And two, the free exercise clause, which means that no state agency or body of government can inhibit the practice of religion.
Right.
Okay, which is very important.
Right.
We want neutrality from our governments when it comes to religion. Unlike many nations around the world, that's part of our history and tradition.
Yeah.
Right? So if you look at the current Supreme Court, their major focus has largely been on free exercise issues. They kind of been shoving establishment aside in favor of the free exercise clause. And it would seem to me that there would, I'm not going to suggest it for creationists, let them do their own legal work. And, I'm not a lawyer. I always say don't take legal advice from a physical anthropologist.
Right.
But I would not be surprised if they weren't, as we speak, cooking up some kind of free exercise angle to go after evolution. Because frankly, if they just get evolution out, they win. They don't have to get They never had to get creationism in. The only reason they went to try to promote creationism and intelligent design creationism is because evolution was there. If you get rid of evolution or you discredit it to the level that students aren't going to take it seriously, you win. So that has been their approach post Dover, post Kitzmiller, since 2005. And I think they're going to ramp that up and try to formalize it. So watch this space.
Next week, in part 2 of my chat with Dr. Eugenie Scott, we talk about the Ancient Apocalypse so-called documentary series on Netflix. Is it just rehashing ancient aliens? And Eugenie's thoughts on debating creationists.
Hi, this is Rob Palmer. I write the well-known Skeptic column in Skeptical Inquirer Online, and I'm a team member of the Guerrilla Skeptics on Wikipedia project, GSOW. But you fine folks may know me because I contributed segments for several episodes of this podcast. Check out my interviews from PsyCon 2019, starting with episode 576. So here's a little known fact. All of my skeptical activism stems from discovering the Skeptic Zone. Yep, I first heard of the GSOW project right here back in 2012 due to Richard's selfless support of it and other skeptical activities around the world. I can honestly say I'd likely still be a skeptical couch potato if I hadn't discovered this podcast. So besides giving back to the Zone by contributing occasional segments, I contribute to the success of the show with ongoing monthly micropayments, and I'm asking you to consider doing the same. You can do that by following the Patreon or PayPal links at skepticzone.tv. Every donation supports the show, and Richard will really appreciate it.
This is Adrienne Hill from Canada, here again to read the highlights from the Australian Skeptics newsletter. This is newsletter number 163. You can subscribe to this newsletter and get it delivered to your inbox every other week, complete with links to all the stories. Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. But now let's see what Tim Mendham has for us this week. Hi all, says Tim. Skepticon 2022 is over, and we're sure that everyone attending in person and online found it a varied, interesting, and inspiring event. Attendees will be able to view the recorded sessions soon. Next year's Skepticon will be in Melbourne. Keep your eyes peeled for date and venue. Note that this is the last newsletter for 2022. Aw. We'll be back mid-January. In the interim, enjoy the holiday season. And think about those poor psychics referred to later who obviously have no idea what they're getting for Christmas. Read on, Tim. Okay, Tim, we'll do just that. Non-doctor Maria Carmela Pau wins 2022 Bent Spoon. The 2022 Bent Spoon Award, the least coveted prize in the skeptical world, has gone to Queensland fake medical doctor Maria Carmela Pau for distributing COVID-related exemptions and reportedly pocketing about $120,000 for issuing 1,200 useless certificates. Pau pleaded guilty in Southport Magistrates Court in July to pretending to be a doctor and aiding people trying to dodge coronavirus restrictions. She has a doctorate in professional research studies and also a master's degree in public health. But that doesn't qualify her to act as a medical doctor, despite her barrister saying she might have been confused. She also markets herself as an actress and model, and has previously been described in court as a spiritual insights coach. She had faced a maximum penalty of a $60,000 fine and 3 years imprisonment. However, acting magistrate Mark Bambury fined Pau $25,000 and no conviction was recorded. There is no report on what happened to the rest of the $120,000 she earned with the false exemptions. Parents who refused a vaccinated blood transfusion. Such a sad story. A baby in New Zealand has been placed in his doctor's care because his parents refused to consent to a transfusion of, quote, vaccinated blood, end quote, in a life-saving operation. The judge noted that New Zealand's blood service had presented evidence from the past 6 months of a, quote, significant increase in potential blood recipients asking for blood from unvaccinated donors or asking about directed donation. Similar trends have been noted in other countries, end quote. How unfortunate. Debunking autism myths rewarded with national prize. A University of Queensland PhD student has been awarded a national prize for debunking a common myth about children with autism. Chloe Yap from UQ's Institute for Molecular Bioscience and Mater Research won the 2022 CSL Florey Next Generation Award, which includes a prize of $20,000 for busting the myth that the gut microbiome causes autism. Ms. Yap and her colleagues found that changes in gut bacteria in children with autism are instead caused by their eating habits. Wow, interesting. QAnon's anti-vaxxer murder theory. Members of the QAnon conspiracy movement have suggested that the actress Kirstie Alley was murdered because of her anti-vax views. Alley had spread multiple conspiracy theories on her social media channels in recent years about COVID-19 and vaccines. Conspiracists claimed that she was possibly murdered because of her outspoken criticism of the vaccines, or that she was forcibly given one and it killed her. Alley was 71 and had apparently been suffering colon cancer for some time, though it was only recently discovered. Quote, material detector, end quote, to eradicate pseudoscience. Ooh. The Online Integrity Center is developing tools to help publishers of scientific journals fight fake searches and image manipulation. It is the result of a year-long collaboration between 24 publishers and providers of academic analysis. Together, they are trying to end the growing scourge of manufactured scientific articles from, quote, paper mills, end quote. Over the last years, the magazines have withdrawn hundreds of articles, fearing the work contained fabricated data and images. As a result, publishers have tried to bolster their defenses to prevent such articles from passing through their submission systems. Netflix's Ancient Apocalypse uses, quote, racist ideologies, end quote. Netflix's new series, Ancient Apocalypse, which suggests that it is unlikely local populations could have built certain ancient structures, has been criticized by experts on Pacific history who say it is founded on racist and white supremacist ideologies and promotes pseudoscience. The series' thesis is bolstered by errors of fact, including the predating of the building's date of construction. The Psychic and the Social Engineer. This is an article on cold reading and how it is used similarly by psychics and social engineers. Quote, both use techniques such as using social cues, making broad statements, and using probability to create the illusion of credibility. There are many overlapping skills used by psychics and social engineers. Always remember, knowledge and skill have the best results when used ethically, end quote. Psychology class considers pseudoscience. The chair of the State University of New York Cortland Psychology Department has joined with students who are looking into the characteristics of pseudoscience and have helped write columns for the Skeptical Inquirer. It is part of the Psychology of Pseudoscience, a class Craig Barker, the chair of the school, taught during a previous semester and hopes to make a permanent part of the curriculum. Foster noted that social psychology examines how situations influence human thought, emotion, and behavior. Likewise, social influence can cause reasonable, intelligent people to believe in pseudoscience, which is why he feels it is important for students to improve their critical thinking and avoid falling for current or future falsehoods. Psychic predictions exposed. The Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project, or GAPP, analyzed all psychic predictions broadcast in Australia over a decade to see if they were accurate. See the December 2021 issue of The Skeptic. Rob Palmer from the Center for Inquiry, USA, shares the results of the project, helmed by noted Australian skeptic Richard Saunders, to reveal the true accuracy of psychic predictions. The first 16 minutes of the video cover the project. Check it out. The digital version of the December issue of The Skeptic magazine is out, and the hard copy will be with readers soon, if they haven't already received it. Great articles on medical misunderstandings, the Great Conspiracy Theory, big waves, exorcism case studies, and the continuing hall of shame of spurious claims and dubious responses. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time to do so. You can sign up for a hard copy or digital edition, or both. The digital is offered free to those who take up the hard copy version. Contact the editor if you're not sure if your existing subscription needs renewing. Learn more about our magazine and subscribe now. Skeptics in Action. If you have any ideas for stories or want to contribute to Skeptics communications, such as the magazine or Facebook page, or just have something you want to get off your chest, then you're welcome to get in touch. News leads should be sent to newstips@skeptics.com.au. Submissions for the magazine, etc. should go to editor@skeptics.com.au. Comments and suggestions should also go to editor@skeptics.com.au. Items of interest. Stunning UFO encounters caught on cameras. Not really that stunning. The production is a lot more sophisticated than the UFO clips, though it uses that annoying technique of shaky handheld camera work designed to add realism. Hasn't anyone heard of a tripod? Maybe trying to match the quality of the studio work with the quality of the UFO films might be a good idea. Psychic animals and some humans on the World Cup. This is continuing our look at some highly undistinguished psychic predictions from animals and people on the Football World Cup. And keep in mind the results of the Great Australian Psychic Prediction Project that we mentioned before. So it's not very promising. Well, Alfie the alpaca is having a bad run. Having predicted that England would lose to Iran when England won 6-2, he then did a complete about-face and said England would beat France, and they lost. A psychic seal named Banana also predicted the England win, and lost. Chow Boy, a lion at a zoo in Thailand, did predict the French win, but also predicted that France would be the only European country in the Final Four. Wrong. Croatia also qualified, and that the four would include Brazil. Wrong again. They lost in the quarterfinals. If you really want to pursue the psychic animal saga, there's an interesting article on their past performances. On the human side, Canadian Anthony Carr, the, quote, modern-day Nostradamus, end quote, who, as a side note, I've never heard of, who claims to have predicted a slew of world events from September 11th to the election of a German pope, predicted an England win at the World Cup, and therefore is as accurate as an alpaca and a banana. By the way, his prediction of 9/11 is not as precise as he might claim. He foresaw a, quote, cataclysmic cosmic event, end quote, and warned people should, quote, watch for a sign in the heavens, end quote, because what was coming would, quote, shock the whole world, end quote, and, quote, put the fear of God in us, end quote. For the record, Mystic Veg, the asparagus thrower, correctly predicted that England would be out in the quarterfinals. One theory about the poor performance of England in the Cup is because of the choice of TV channels showing the games. When an England World Cup match is shown on the BBC, England has a 75% winning record. However, on ITV, that falls to just 13.33%. And finally, exhibiting a distinctly poor appreciation of maths and statistics, Qatar's giant pandas Thuraya and Suhail, quote, gained fame during the World Cup 2022 by correctly predicting the outcome of 11 out of 24 matches, end quote. In a two-horse race, 11 out of 24 is less than 50%. A banana could do better than that. And finally, a self-proclaimed time traveler who shared alleged video footage from the football tournament 3 weeks in the future divined a massive win for Brazil. He must have been looking at the wrong future TV channel. Maybe it was ITV. Silliest story of the week. I didn't know it could get more silly than what I just read. Psychic medium supported by spirits against fear of haircuts. There is such a thing as a fear of haircuts, known as tonsure-phobia. But psychic Tracy May says it is, quote, nothing to be laughed about, end quote, and wishes people would stop treating it as a joke. She thinks that seeing clips of the film Edward Scissorhands may be one of the primary causes. She hasn't yet been able to find an effective treatment, but she said spirits have supported her, reassuring her that, quote, it's going to be okay, end quote. She has tried putting crystals in her bra, using essential oils, and doing breathing exercises to calm herself down. But nothing has completely treated her phobia. Maybe it's not her tonsure-phobia that people are laughing at. Well, that's all for now. And this is Adrienne Hill signing off with a public service announcement this time. If you are out photographing beautiful mountain surroundings on a very cold morning and assume you're on land at a lake because of how the snow ended in a ridge along the ice on the lake, do not trust it. You could be on the lake ice and have one foot fall through. And yes, this happened to me this past weekend. Frankly, it was a frightening experience that I don't recommend duplicating. I was with others, and of course the water level was below my knee, but our wonderful day ended abruptly in order to dump out mucky, stinky cold water from my boot and to warm me up. Stay safe, everyone.
Hi, I'm Ben Radford, co-host of Squaring the Strange podcast. In these trying times, as we help each other out to hold on to hope, we want you to know that we're here for you.
Hey, what are you going on about?
Who's interrupting my heartfelt promotional copy?
It's me, Celestia Ward, your co-host. Really? In these trying times? That's the best you can do?
Well, I'm just doing what everyone else is doing. I thought...
That's not what we do.
Oh, for crying out loud, who else is here?
Pascual Romero, your other co-host?
Hey.
We don't do what everybody else does, Ben. That's kind of our thing at Squaring the Strange.
Yeah, we try to approach things a little differently than your standard skeptical talky talk show.
We do our own thing, bringing science, critical thinking, and skepticism to bear on issues of the day. We've got a professional skeptical author, Ben, who has decades of experience researching topics for a dozen books and thousands of articles.
And a cartoonist skeptic, Celestia, who knows her stuff when it comes to facial weirdness and the psychology of perception.
And a badass heavy metal rock star and tech engineer, Pascual, who brings knowledge of all things audio, plus a bunch of neck tattoos.
Squaring the Strange explores topics both mysterious and mundane through a critical lens. Monsters, panics, media literacy.
Okay, forget the whole trying times promo idea. But we have chupacabras and clown panics, right?
Yes,
Ben.
Now it's time once again to dive into those pages at Trove, at trove.nla.gov.au, the online resource from the Australian Government and the National Library of Australia. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me? Those good people over there at the National Library. Thank you for digitizing millions of articles, reports, and so on from magazines and journals and newspapers. But this week we're going to start at the Skeptic's Dictionary because the subject this week is crystal healing or crystal energy, crystal power. And in the Skeptic's Dictionary we read crystal power. A crystal is a solid formed by the solidification of chemicals as a regular repeating internal arrangement of atoms and molecules, and is bounded by external plane faces. Crystal particles form a variety of geometrical shapes due to their internal compressions. Crystals have aesthetic properties that have long made them attractive in jewelry. Very true. But they also have some properties that make them very important to the electronics and optical industries. Today, crystals are used in just about every type of modern technology. For centuries, crystals and other gems have been desired for their alleged magical healing and mystical paranormal powers. This belief continues today among occultists and New Age healers, even though it's based on nothing more than testimonials, the placebo effect, selective thinking, wishful thinking, subjective validation, sympathetic magic, and communal reinforcement. There is no scientific evidence that crystals are conduits of magical energies useful for healing and protection or foretelling the future. We can dismiss the pre-scientific belief in magical powers of crystals and gemstones as due to a lack of scientific knowledge. Modern occultists, however, distort and falsify scientific knowledge in order to promote belief in their crystal products. According to the purveyors of this crystalline pseudoscience, crystals channel good energy and ward off bad energy. They can carry vibrations that resonate with healing frequencies. All, of course, is just word salad. Work with the chakras and help balance yin and yang. Crystals allegedly affect the emotions and can be used not only for physical healing but for emotional problems as well. Crystals can not only help with emotional healing but with self-expression, creativity, meditation, and the immune system. None of these claims is backed up by any scientific evidence. Today, crystal wands are used to heal auras in aura therapy. But one of the more egregious pseudoscientific claims regarding crystals is that, if arranged properly, they can provide protection against harmful electromagnetic forces, such as those that are emitted by computer monitors, cellular phones, microwave ovens, hairdryers, power lines, and other people. The bioelectric shield was invented by a chiropractor from Montana, Charles Brown, who claimed he heard voices in his head and had visions in his bed as to how to arrange crystals in the shape of a flying saucer in order to provide protection. His bioelectric shields are sold for anywhere from $139 to over $1,000. Claire Blair, the wife of the former Prime Minister of the UK, wears one of these magical pendants. They are said to be medically proven and based on Nobel Prize-winning physics. Even if the claims about the protective power of these pendants were true, it would be necessary to envelop your entire body in one to achieve the desired result. By hanging a little piece of jewelry around the neck, you might be able to protect a small part of the throat, however. So that's what the Skeptic's Dictionary has to say about crystal power, crystal healing, crystal energy. Let's see what the papers say. And our first result comes from the Port Lincoln Times in South Australia, dated the 25th of February, 1992, so over 30 years ago. And the article is called Air House, that's E-Y-R-E, Quest for Health. Natural healing is an effective way to reduce stress, pain, and achieve total relaxation. For people who are looking for alternative health measures, Air House can assist general practitioners in the quest for their patients' total health. Air House Centre of Natural Health offers a comprehensive list of natural healing services. Flotation therapy, a relaxation method for the mind and body. Patients spend about 1 hour in a tank floating on buoyant liquid. This environment causes the body and mind to go into natural and very deep relaxation. Flotation is completely safe, even in pregnancy. Now, I'll just stop here to say I did this many years ago. Many years ago, I think sometime during the 1980s. I had a couple of sessions in a float tank, and without doubt, it was very restful, calming, and quite a nice experience. But I certainly wouldn't attribute any miracle health outcomes to it. It was just a very pleasant experience. Yoga, a gentle exercise for all ages, and is particularly helpful in arthritis and limited mobility patients. Yoga will revitalize your body by introducing deep, rhythmic breathing. It will increase blood circulation, taking more oxygen to the body tissues and tone the muscles and nerves. Yoga will aid the digestion and elimination of food. As a consequence, a person feels healthier and happier. Naturopath. Patients are offered an all-round healing treatment, including massage and assessment of bodily functions via the invaluable tool of iris diagnosis. Iridology. Dietary recommendations can be made to suit specific needs, and herbal medicine, homeopathic remedies, wildflower essence, and vitamin supplements can be prescribed. In many cases, healing can be accelerated with the application of suitable poultices, which are easily prepared and applied at home. Beauty therapists, specializing in all aspects of beauty therapy, with special consideration to skincare, especially through facials using marine products. Okay. Great for acne sufferers, cellulite problems, or any skin condition. Facials are offered for a luxurious beauty boost and are coupled with skincare analysis, including diet advice. This is an interesting list. I hope we get to the crystals. Facial and body waxing, pedicures, manicures, eyelash tinting, and cellulite massage are available. Traditional Chinese massage. It is delivered with the sole intention of motivating, liberating, and utilizing resources within the body in such a way that does not abnormally retard, artificially accelerate, or otherwise impede the natural healing processes. This is reading just like an advertising blurb, isn't it? It really is. What does it say at the top? Oh, well, it does say advertising features, so there we go. I might skip all the other bits that talk about Reiki and what's this? Natural nutritional analysis. Here we go. Crystal healing. A fast yet gentle balancing of the body's energy fields, both physical and subtle. There are no side effects, while the benefit is an acceleration of healing in all areas of medicine. And it goes on, health education, Tai Chi, etc., etc. Now this dates from 1992, and I would probably have to say that even today you can probably find such outrageous claims being made in newspapers under the guise of advertising or whatever. Outrageous and ridiculous claims that we've just heard, including, of course, crystal healing. And next we look at the pages of Thrunka from the University of New South Wales, dated the 11th of April 1989, and a feature called The New Age, which goes on to talk about the various alternative methods of healing: acupuncture, homeopathy, medical hypnotherapy, hydrotherapy, herbalist, chiropractic, osteopathy, zone therapy. Zone therapy? I want zone. Okay, sure. Not the Skeptic Zone therapy. Naturopathy, iridology, molecular medicine, biofeedback. Biofeedback, that's an old one. Negative ion therapy, colon irrigation. Talks about those, but here's the part where it discusses crystals. Crystals. Using crystals for healing is the most controversial aspect of New Ageism. Believers claim scientific support for crystal healing in the fact that industry has long used quartz crystals as a means of focusing and transforming energy. A tiny slice of quartz in a microcircuit increases electrical signal. When cut into precise shapes, quartz vibrates at precise rates and transforms electricity into waves which can be broadcast, as in the radio and television signals. Quartz changes solar energy into electricity in devices called photovoltaic cells. It is a large leap from "here," cries the cynic, to certification of sublime healing power. For the New Ages, however, it's simply a logical progression. The physical body is the end result of energy. The total human is a series of energy systems interconnecting the mind, emotions, and the body. Crystals, because they can amplify energy, interact with these energy systems, and in conjunction with the mind create functional changes which will then manifest in the physical body. Simply hold the crystal in your left hand, feel it pulsing, or maybe you just feel your own pulse when you do that, with your life force, and hey presto, you're cured. Purple quartz will clear headaches, rose quartz will balance the love emotions, and clear quartz will give you that all-important body energization. James, proprietor of Essential Energies, a retail outlet on Glebe Point Road, offering practitioners' services, course and workshops for the New Ager, attests to the power of crystals. Recently, when searching for a Sydney abode, he dedicated a crystal to ensure that his particular demands were met. 2 bedrooms with a harbour view, all at a certain price. The energy of the crystal, he explained, is directionalized into the circuit of the brain. While the footwork was all his success in attaining the lease ahead of 6 other candidates was all the crystal's workings. The article does go on a bit more about other things, but the conclusion is New Ageism is not a cohesive, all-embracing philosophy. Some take up only those parts of the lifestyle and philosophies that they find useful. Many may eat whole grain and do yoga, but still maintain an interest in the world outside their serene, flipper-communing, crystal-pulsating, self-obsessed headspaces. That's an interesting article, and the byline is Tamara. I don't know who that could have been. So they're just some of the millions of articles at your fingertips. If you go to Trove at trove.nla.gov.au, type in your search, and you never know what you might find. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Next week, it's part 2 of the interview with Dr. Eugenie Scott, where we look at the Ancient Apocalypse TV program. My ongoing thanks to those people who support the Skeptic Zone at Patreon or PayPal at skepticzone.tv. It means the show can keep going, and every now and then I can buy some nice new microphones. But for this week, this is Richard Saunders signing off from the Bay Area, San Francisco. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Please visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for show notes, contacts, and to access the back catalogue of episodes going back to 2008. You can follow the Skeptic Zone podcast on Twitter at Skeptic Zone, visit our Facebook page, or leave a review on iTunes. You can also support the Skeptic Zone via Patreon or PayPal. The Skeptic Zone podcast is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian skeptics or any other skeptical organization.